Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gina. Have you ever wondered why the sky is blue, why the sunset is red, and why the clouds are white? In this video, we'll discuss the physics behind the reason why we're seeing those colors in the sky. First, we have to understand that light is electromagnetic waves, and they are characterized by their wavelength. From long waves to short waves, they are radio waves, microwaves, infrared, and finally the visible light. And shorter than the visible light, they are ultraviolet, X-rays, and gamma waves. So visible lights are just a range of wavelengths that can be seen by human eyes. When the solar radiation comes into our atmosphere, there are different processes that can happen. First, it can interact with the particles in the atmosphere, such as gases, clouds, and aerosols, through the scattering or absorption. It can also have chemical reactions, such as the photochemical processes. In this video, we'll focus on the scattering of the solar radiation. We'll discuss what will happen when the solar radiation scatters from air molecules, particles, and clouds. Solar radiation emits maximum energy in the range of visible light. And just a quick reminder, the visible light have wavelength between 400 nanometers to 700 nanometers. And the radius of air molecules such as oxygen, nitrogen, and argon, they are smaller than 1 nanometer. So the size of air molecules are a lot smaller than the wavelength of solar radiation. When the radiation scatters from a molecule that is a lot smaller than the wavelength, then the scattering can be described by the Rayleigh scattering theory. The Rayleigh scattering is characterized by equal scattering in the forward and backward directions, and strong wavelength dependence. The scattering is proportional to the inverse of wavelength to the power of 4. In other words, shorter wavelength will scatter more than longer wavelength. And it's this wavelength dependence that is responsible for blue skies and red sunsets. Let's go back to this figure again. Remember that light is just a range of wavelength that can be seen by human eyes. And this wavelength range is from 400 nanometers to 700 nanometers. The red light has longer wavelength. It is around 700 nanometers. And blue light, it has shorter wavelength. It has wavelength around 400 nanometers. And from red to blue, it contains all the color in the rainbow. And since the blue lights have shorter wavelength, and the Rayleigh scattering is inversely proportional to wavelength to the power of 4, so the blue light from the solar radiation will scatter more than the long wave, the red light from the solar radiation. And that is the reason why the sky is blue. When it's at noon, it takes a shorter path for the solar radiation to reach to the surface of the Earth. Less blue light will scatter in this case. So at noon, we'll see the sun as the combination of all the colors in the rainbow, which is white. But for sunrise and sunset, the path for the solar radiation to reach to the observer is longer. So more blue light will scatter. So when the solar radiation reaches to the observer, only the long waves are left, since only short waves are scattered away. So at sunset and sunrise, the sun will appear as red orange-ish. And all the blue lights are scattered away along the path that makes the sky blue. Now let's talk about what happens when the solar radiation is scattered by particles. In our atmosphere, there is a variety of sources of particles, such as dust, soil, chemical reaction between gases, his droplets, and combustions. and the size of particles are comparable to the wavelength of the solar radiation. And when the light is scattered by a particle that has comparable size to its wavelength, then the scattering is described by the mean scattering theory. The mean scattering is characterized by the scattered radiation is predominantly in the forward direction, and there's a weak wavelength dependence. It means that when the solar radiation comes into our atmosphere and scattered by a particle, the particles will change the incident angle, but the scattering is forward scattering, so the light will still reach to the Earth. And since there's no wavelength dependence, so all the wavelength will scatter equally. And that is the reason why hazy skies appear whitish rather than blue. And a quick note, some aerosol particles also absorb solar radiation, but we will not discuss about the absorption in this video. Maybe I'll make another video on that. Finally, what happens when the solar radiation is scattered by clouds? The size of cloud droplet is usually around 10 millimeters, which is a lot larger than the visible wavelength. When a radiation is scattered by a particle that is a lot larger than its wavelength, it's similar to the mean scattering. It has weak wavelength dependence. For mean scattering, most of the scattering is forward scattering. However, if a cloud is thick enough, it can have multiple scattering happen inside the cloud. So some of the solar radiation will be scattered back to the space. And that is the reason why when there's a thick cloud, it appears as dark from below, but when you see the same cloud from above, it's actually bright. And a quick fun fact, clouds can also absorb some solar radiation. I hope you learned something new in this video. If next time, when someone asks you why the sky is blue, why the sunset is red, why the clouds are white, you'll be able to answer them. If you like my videos, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.